The O'Connor tripod is $15,000. Most are about $300. They both hold cameras and have 3 legs, so what's going on? When we first got into pro gear, tripods weren't really on our mind. Camera and the lens, that made sense, but tripods mostly felt like an afterthought. And then we actually used these. The O'Connor 1040D fluid head.
All of O'Connor's heads allow you as the camera operator to dial it to the way you want to film. These legs are probably around $1,500, $2,000. They might be a little bit more. Across the board, what you're buying when you buy a tripod is the head. The cost of just the head itself is around $11,000 to $13,000. It depends on where you get it, time of frame you get it.
To understand why it cost an astronomical $15,000, it helps to have some history. 1949, Chadwell O'Connor is a mechanical engineer and Caltech graduate. During World War II, O'Connor worked at Douglas Aircraft in production and repair. After the war, he became chief engineer at Pasadena Power and Light. He designed steam power plants. He was obsessed with steam locomotives. They were dying out and he wanted to film them before they were gone. The problem was every time he tried to pan with his Bell & Howell camera to follow a moving train, it was jerky, stuttery. So what would an engineer do? He would build something. He went into his garage and he did just that. He created a fluid dampened head.
There's actual fluid running through this.
Inside of that thing.
Yeah.
What kind of fluid is in this? Do you know what it is? Just water? Or
No, it's like
hydraulic fluid.
It's like hydraulic fluid. So when I loosen this, you see how this becomes easier?
What?
No more stick and slip, just smooth. Then one day he's at Glendale Station filming trains, and another guy walks up. The gentleman was also a train enthusiast. He sees this weird contraption and asks O'Connor what it was. The guy was Walt Disney himself. Disney was shooting The Living Desert, one of his first nature documentaries. He needed to track animals, birds, insects, things that move unpredictably. Disney saw O'Connor's setup and immediately understood what it could do for the film. Disney asked O'Connor if he could build more of them. O'Connor agreed and went to building them in his garage. The Living Desert went on to win the Academy Award for Best Documentary in 1953. O'Connor's technology was literally there at the beginning of Disney's nature documentaries. O'Connor himself ended up winning 2 Academy Awards, a Scientific and Engineering Award in 1975, and then the full Oscar in 1992. He held 29 patents by the time he died in 2007. The friendship with Disney went beyond tripods. He designed the power systems for steam locomotives and paddle wheelers at Disney World. When the National Park Service wanted to recreate Golden Spike Ceremony, they went to Disney, who went to O'Connor to build the replica locomotives.
The National Park Service contracted O'Connor Engineering Laboratories in Costa Mesa, California, to build the replicas. Chadwell O'Connor, president of O'Connor Engineering Laboratories, and John Healy, his chief engineer, formed the team that were to draw the new plans and reconstruct the engines from the rails up.
One of the requirements in the specifications for the 2 locomotives was that they had to be within 1/4 of an inch of the original locomotives.
The man who invented this technology was building full-scale steam locomotives for the National Park Service. That's the level of mechanical precision we're talking about here with the tripod.
This is infinitely adjustable. This allows you to get the most specific you can for that very specific shot. So whether it's like a 10-second creep or a really fast, quick pan, you can dial these knobs in a way that gets it right every single time.
That precision is present in how this thing is built. Before the 1900s, cameras were mostly locked off. There was no panning or tilting. The camera sat still. The Great Train Robbery in 1903, it's one of the first notable pans in cinema history. D.W. Griffith started popularizing panoramic movement. But the problem was, in the 1920s, when sound came to film, movement literally stopped. Sound requires quiet sets. The cameras of that time were ridiculously loud, so they got encased in these sort of soundproofing, massive muffling boxes. Doing so made the cameras unwieldy. You couldn't move them. When they did move, it was still friction-based. Metal on metal, add some grease. The legend is the camera operators could write their names in cursive with chalk attached to the head. That is literally how precise you had to be to use them. That's right where O'Connor's invention disrupted things. Suddenly, you didn't need a specialized operator. Smooth camera movement became accessible to anyone who understood the basics of cinematography.
The system, how this tripod head works, is the same as the system in 1949 when they first came out.
Most people are working with a cheaper tripod. You can get shots, nice movement, and we still do use that stuff for the occasional shoot. The difference is that fluid cartridge. The O'Connor uses a sealed system that is silicone based. It provides consistent resistance.
Most tripods that advertise as fluid head, it's friction pads. So they use friction pads and grease, and you've got these preset numbers, usually 1 through 5 on pan and 1 through 5 on tilt, and it doesn't give you minute capabilities. This does.
And I start to increase the fluid. So you'll see that it starts to stiffen up.
I'm getting it to where I can do this and it stays.
The next thing that separates these two worlds of a tripod is counterbalance. Counterbalance when it comes to tripods simply means the mechanical upward pressure in the tripod head that cancels out the weight of your camera. With a basic head, if your camera package is too heavy, which always is the case, it just wants to fall. So you crank down the drag, you play with some knobs, and now everything feels like you're fighting it.
Basically what I do is I balance this first, which this plate slides, right? And I've got numbers on top of here. And so I loosen everything, I sit it on here, I lock this down to where the camera doesn't fall backwards or forwards. I start increasing this counterbalance. And basically what that allows me to do is when I move the tripod in any way, like down, back, side to side, it will stay in that one position. That just doesn't happen on friction-based tripod.
Whenever I leave it, it just stays there. It doesn't move anywhere else.
On a large film set, when you have something like an RE setup, this isn't a $100,000 plus camera set. And they go far more than that. Those often weigh over 50 plus pounds. You can't have that tumbling to the ground.
Once you talk about what's going into this device and also thinking about the context of you might be putting a $75,000 camera on top of it, it's essentially your insurance.
It becomes a lot of weight for most tripods to handle smoothly. The O'Connor, I can dial in the exact counterbalance for whatever the camera setup we're using. You can let go completely and it stays right there like this. You move it, it stays. And that is because the head is doing all the work.
Friction-based tripods do have counterbalance sometimes, but again, you cannot get it to the precise weight of what that camera might be. We might have other tools on the camera for a certain shot which increase or decrease the weight of that camera. So when that happens, I just pull up the counterbalance, I turn it a little bit until I can get it where I turn it down and it stays. Obviously it's not staying right now because there's not a camera on it.
The build quality is insane. We can move on to that. It is basically built like it's going to war. And in film, it frankly sort of is. Gear gets thrown in trucks, dragged across locations, used in rain, sand, freezing cold. 100+ days of production on a season of television. The 1040D is machined aluminum, magnesium alloys, stainless steel components, and sealed bearings across everything. The carbon fiber accents that you'll see in our footage, it's not just aesthetic, they're weight savings in non-critical areas. Because you save weight there, the critical areas can be overbuilt without a giant weight addition.
So right now I'm just gonna separate the head from the legs. And what's really cool about this system, when I take this off, you've got this little circle part, and a hi-hat is basically like a wooden box that has a bowl in it where this sits. So you don't even need to use the legs for some shots. These legs are pretty cool. These are carbon fiber. They sell different types of legs. They sell like really heavy duty legs. They sell these legs, which are super lightweight. I mean, feel how heavy that is. Wow. So that's the bowl where the tripod head sits in. We could have this head, but say we needed like longer legs or more heavy duty legs for whatever reason. You just buy the legs separately and you have the head. Some tripods that system is kind of locked down and you're stuck with those legs.
A huge difference with tripods at this level is serviceability.
O'Connor's phenomenal. You send it into them, I think for $500, maybe $800, and they repair the whole head and send it back to you. So it really is like a one-time purchase, and they maintain their tripods.
This truly is a philosophy difference here. Cheaper heads are often disposable. O'Connor didn't want that. They're designed at every level to be maintained. The DPs I've talked to are still using the same O'Connor heads they bought 15, 20 years ago, and they are still going strong.
You know, when you're buying a tripod like this, you could give it to your grandkids, and it's gonna work the same way as when you bought it day one.
Here's the thing most ignore though. The expensive gear does not make you a better filmmaker. Spending more on your gear can allow the gear to get out of the way. If it's not in your way, You can execute what's in your head without equipment being a frustrating factor.
All of their legs are engineered in a way that makes a lot of sense. I have not seen other leg companies have a handle like this. Why not? The handle makes it so easy, one, to extend the legs, but also just to carry the tripod. I can actually move this handle on any of these 3 sides.
Oh,
So you can actually, if you want to, have 3 handles on here. These might look a little bit different because you're like, where's the knob to extend the leg? On most tripod legs, you have, you know, a knob maybe in the middle and a knob at the very end, and that's how you extend. What's cool about these is it's just one. Well, say this is the height I wanted. It just falls completely to that length. So it's one spot, and then I pop it down and it's locked. And then I can do that real quickly with all of the legs. And now all 3 are touching the ground. You'd think if you make such a good tripod head, it's like, oh, the legs don't matter as much. Not O'Connor.
Now, should you buy this? No. I mean, maybe no. 15 grand is a ton of money, like a ridiculous amount. You know, if you're starting out, a couple $100 tripod is honestly just fine. You should rather spend your money on the story, locations, actors, and on learning. Spend that money making cool stuff. Often gear limitations push your creativity. Also, if you don't have a nice camera, of course, that should be your first big spend anyway. Now, if you're doing content where you run around like events and weddings, where you're mostly handheld or on like a gimbal, you just don't need this level for the limited tripod work you're most likely doing. Handheld means that it's handheld. You don't need this. If anything, get a cheap tripod for those stationary shots. You don't need this. But there is a level where this makes sense to buy. For long form production, televisions, features, commercial shoots, and even high-end clients, if you're doing hundreds of setups, this actually might make sense. The weight saving of professional gear is not a luxury at that point. If your work requires precise, repeatable movements, like interview setups or product shots, this also might make sense. Now, this is important. If you're billing clients at professional rates, without a doubt this makes sense. Your clients do expect cinema level. The difference between cheap gear and professional gear can absolutely show up on screen. Again though, you can make great stuff on cheap equipment, but that difference for high-end clients, if it shows up on screen, will matter. Like we spoke about earlier, if the equipment is out of the way, for example, I can do this pan and I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried about having to take a second take. I'm confident I can do the pan. Then you'll be more confident, creative, and comfortable to get the shots that are in your head. That allows you to serve your clients best and tap into your creativity without friction. So do you buy it? Well, O'Connor gives you consistent professional performance the whole time. There's no learning resets. There's no, sorry, we need another take, the tripod stuttered, which will absolutely happen on cheaper setups. For a pro operation, I say absolutely yes, buy it. You need to assess how much you will actually use it. And look, there's also somewhat of a middle ground that you can explore. There's Satchler, Cartoni, Miller. These are still pro tripods in the like $3,000 to $6,000 range that are still great. You don't have to go right to O'Connor. But if you're at a level where you're competing for work against people who do have this gear, where the productions you're on are the kind that have been using O'Connor since the 90s, that's when you start to seriously think about it. So $15,000 for a tripod, the same tech that helped Walt Disney win an Academy Award in 1953, the same used on basically every major Hollywood production for the last 30 years, built by a company started by a guy who just wanted to film trains and accidentally revolutionize cinematography. Is it overpriced and unnecessary, or one of the smartest long-term investments in the industry? I think you know where we land. Thanks for watching. If you want to see more of this stuff, talking production and gear, subscribe. We also have many of our own film projects coming up soon, so look forward to those.